Hello, everybody. Well, I did have a blogger, a subscriber, ask me a while back, are you going to do a show on recruiting on National Signing Day? Well, he's going to get his wish because this is the first time in the many years that I have done Sooner blogs, as the OU Sooner 56, that I have done a show about Oklahoma National Signing Day, recruiting in other words. And entering today, February the 3rd, National Signing Day, all of the Sooners' verbal commitments have signed. Okay, all of the ones who said that they were definitely committing to Oklahoma have signed the dotted line and are officially Sooners as a result of their national letter of intent. Now, this past weekend, one of their biggest names did sign on the dotted line today. Mark Jackson, a defensive end out of Texas, whom at this time last year had Texas on his mind. Texas A&M was his choice verbally as of last May. Then this past weekend visited Norman, loved what he saw as far as the football program, but also, too, as a student, he really liked what he could do at the University of Oklahoma. So the Sooners got a verbal commitment from him on Monday, decommitting from Texas A&M. So Mark Jackson, a 6'3", 235-pound defensive end, fulfilling a big need there because remember, he had Eric Stryker, who's run out of eligibility. He was listed as a linebacker, but of course Stryker would at times be lined up as a defensive end in order to put pressure on the quarterback. Mark Jackson could be that same type of player. Speaking of defensive ends for the Sooners, Amani Bledsoe out of Lawrence, Kansas. He also signs on the dotted line for Oklahoma, 6'5", 272. He was a verbal commitment a couple of weeks ago. Guy I'm really excited about, probably the guy I'm excited about the most as far as the defensive 2016 class for the Sooners, Jordan Parker. And this guy's out of Pittsburgh, California, 5'11", 184. Some people compare him to Darrelle Revis. We'll wait and see about that. Revis is an all-pro defensive back in the NFL for so many years. Parker, I've heard he's 5'11". I've even heard that he's 6'1". I guess you can say he's 6 foot if you go off the averages. But Jordan Parker, guy who will really stick to you. And again, the Sooners land him out of the state of California. Now, speaking of California, one guy that the Sooners thought that they had in their grasp is Bryce Youngquist, but because of personal reasons and why I've heard health issues, his family says that he's not going to college this next year. That's why there was no signing for him on this very day. The Sooners already knew that, I believe, before signing day. So Bryce Youngquist not signing because of personal reasons, and for right now, he's got some personal issues to fix. Linebacking, this is a big issue for the Sooners because 5 of their top 6 linebackers from this past season not back, okay? Either because they've run out of eligibility or because they left early, like Dominic Alexander. But, of course, you mentioned Eric Stryker. You're not going to have him, nor Devontae Bond, nor P.L. Lindley, nor Frank Shannon. So, again, 5 of your top 6 linebackers are gone. Major need that the Sooners have to fulfill. And it looks like so far this class has done that in the form of, John Michael Terry, out of Tulsa, Victory Christian, I believe, 6'3" at 230. Should be able to help them right away. And the Sooners also really went to the route of Scranton, Pennsylvania, to get another linebacker. That's Emmanuel Beal. Capri Dossett, they get him to another linebacker. And an offensive lineman out of Scranton, PA, 6'8", 330 from the JUCO ranks. And that is Ashton Julius. Does not look 330. Pretty tall, kind of a lean 330, but he could pretty well fit into that rotation immediately. So you have Ashton Julius, offensive lineman from Scranton, PA. Now, before we get into the rest of the offensive recruits of note, remember, I'm not going to go over every single name on the recruiting list, just many of what I feel are the bigger names on the list for the Sooners that they got to sign national letters of intent. Before I get to the offensive side, there were some misses for Oklahoma in terms of players that had not yet verbal committed or at one point had, but on signing day was uncertain. Of course, Chris Daniels was one of them. He had committed to Oklahoma, then decommitted, didn't know where he was going to go. Both Chris Daniels and Marcel Southall, both defensive linemen out of Texas, both commit to the University of Texas. The Longhorns, by the way, had a big recruiting day for Charlie Strong. Speaking of defense, Jared Maiden, another guy that the Sooners thought they had a real big shot at getting. He commits to Alabama out of Sash, Texas. And I have not heard anything about Riley Cole. I've been trying to find out about Riley Cole, another linebacker. You can't have too many linebackers if you're the Sooners, especially from this class, 6'3", 217, out of Alabama. I have not heard yet if he has committed. Riley Cole, who was a one-time Alabama commit but had decommitted, I still have not been able to find out if and who he has signed with. The biggest name is still out there for Oklahoma as far as a five-star recruit. Okay, and I believe he's the last five-star recruit nationwide that has not signed yet. That's Caleb Kelly, an outside linebacker who would be a big addition if he can come to Oklahoma. 6'3", 214, out of Fresno. I believe he played at a high school called Clovis West in California. It's come down to three schools for him: the Sooners, Oregon, and Notre Dame. He's supposed to announce at 7:30 Oklahoma time, Wednesday night, February 3rd, where he's going. I'll put an annotation on this video as soon as we find out who he's going to commit to. And if Oklahoma can land him, that would really upgrade that linebacker core, because Caleb Kelly, I think, would start right away. I think he's that good of a player. But again, he has yet to sign at all. He's supposed to make an announcement at some elementary school there in his home grounds. Let's talk about offense for the Sooners. Quarterback, of course, you know there's no Trevor Knight. He went to Texas A&M. Cody Thomas, for the time being, is fully focused on baseball. So all of a sudden, Sooners, even though Kyler Murray from Texas A&M is coming to Oklahoma, can't use him this next year because he has to sit out because of the transfer rule. So, you know, hopefully Baker Mayfield won't get hurt, but if he does, you're going to have somebody to step in there. Austin Kendall out of Wax Hacks, North Carolina, a guy that has, you know, basically been in Oklahoma's pocket since April. You'll have him, four-star recruit, 6'2", and 210, strong arm, a guy that's not extremely mobile, but has played in a system just like Lincoln Riley's since his freshman year of high school. So the transition from him may not be as big of one as you might think. So you have Austin Kendall. Speaking of North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, at running back, you have Abdul Adams. Got to remember that, you know, Samaje Perine, this will be his third year coming up. And Joe Mixon, even though it will be his second year coming up, keep in mind, of course, he didn't play his freshman year because he was suspended. So he's been with the program 3 years. You could lose both to the NFL after this next year. So, you know, Abdul Adams, you know, could be called upon some reserve duty pretty early. We'll see if that happens or if they redshirt him. But you have him. And offensive line, a huge need for Oklahoma. I'd probably say offensive line, linebacker, and wideouts, who we'll talk about in a second, are the three biggest needs for the Sooners. But you have Eric Swinson, 6'5", 300, out of Illinois, from a town called Downers Grove. He was a verbal commitment as of this past Sunday, just recently. So you have him, he signed the dotted line, along with another offensive lineman, John Carlo Valentin, 6'5", out of Philadelphia. He was a verbal commitment a few weeks ago, but he's officially signed. And we already mentioned Ashton Julius, 6'8", 330 from the JUCO ranks, also out of Pennsylvania from Scranton. Wide receivers, let's talk about them while we have the chance. Mikael Jones at 6 foot even, 180 from Patterson, Louisiana. Look, you lose your top two receivers, you know, if you're the Sooners. Sterling Shepard, who set school records, and you also lose Deron Neal as well. So Mikael Jones could very well fit into that rotation, as well as Zach Farrar at 6'3", a tall target, and 210 pounds from Texas out of Southland. This class, and before I go any further, unlike a lot of Sooner classes in the past, especially under Bob Stoops, this one did not have a lot of Texas commits on it. Didn't have very many at all. Probably the fewest that we've seen in quite a while. All-around athlete, speaking of Texas, out of Houston, Adrian Hardy, 6'2", 185, a diverse player. You'll have him at your disposal. So the Sooners class, I would say solid, okay? Was it great? Well, according to Rivals.com, not as great as the typical usual suspects, the players, the top in the country that generally go to LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Auburn. That hasn't changed, okay? And again, Texas made a late push today to have a top 10 class. Them, and I'll probably say Baylor and TCU were the top three, but the Sooners a close fourth. Now, if Caleb Kelly does sign, that will elevate the Sooners' overall class. Keep in mind that these ratings, according to Rivals, they're not scientific, and sometimes you might have a 2 or a 3-star player end up being All-American, and sometimes the 5-star players don't mean jack. But you do notice that typically when Rivals and these sources like Scout and ESPN rate a player so high, they're consistent, okay? I mean, the teams that generally have the highest recruiting classes are the ones that generally are national championship contenders, okay? We like to say it's all coaching, but we're not idiots as fans. We know that you got to have talent, and those schools get the talent. Oklahoma used to get those top 10 recruiting classes. It's still probably going to be a top 20 class, and if Caleb Kelly signs, and again, I'll have that annotation tonight on his decision, then it'll elevate certainly, but the Sooners, it's still a good class, okay? It's not top 10, but it's still good. And they did fulfill the 3 biggest needs: offensive line, wide receiver, and linebacker, and whether they get Caleb Kelly or not. So good job by the Sooners.